Mary Sykes kept telling me that her daughter would see it.
Are you doing Rumble too?
I could do Rumble, I guess. I don't have a Rumble account. Should I put it on Rumble? I guess I should put it on Rumble.
Some people aren't liking YouTube these days.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, I just did because it was convenient. They haven't banned me yet.
Just give them
Expecting
time.
it, man. Give them time.
Give them time, we'll say something.
They'll say something probably. Yeah.
I know you're doing right if they ban you.
Yes.
Yeah, I go to
How many
Rumble. I
times
go
has
to Rumble.
Facebook banned you?
Well, so, I realized that for English, if you haven't had a second language, the English part is a little difficult. So, especially going between languages, because when you do language study, they always use these. And these are the noun cases. I may give you some stuff in verb cases too. A verb is probably more important, well, not more important. To understand stuff in a foreign languages, you got to understand the noun cases. And this is the stuff that you got pounded into you. Well, I hope you got pounded into you when you were in elementary school grammar, right? You remember that? Does anyone remember, what do? We diagram sentences, right? And stuff. I don't think they do that anymore. It's not allowed. They don't do cursive either, But you need to know these things. What's that?
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. If you can't understand your language, you'll end up like the people that say, Janet and me went to the store, right? Or between you and me, between you and I, or myself. You see this all the time. Like, didn't you ever learn to speak English? If you can't speak your own language, how are you going to figure out other languages? But they actually hobble us in English. They hurt us because they do not teach what we call functional cases in general grammar. So I put on here, and this is about functional cases in general grammar. The reason they don't, I don't know why they don't. Why do we get like why they cut our tendons, right? When we're studying English, it makes it impossible to study other languages because other languages are not like English, and all other languages work this way. So what I'm showing you is what you will learn if you study German or Latin or French or even Spanish or German or Greek. So we call it the subject, the noun that is the subject. That is called the nominative. Nominative, I wrote it there. Nominative. Nominative case. It's the nominative case. So a nominative case, Bill ran. Bill is a nominative case. We call it the subject, but it's the nominative case of the noun. And in other languages, like for example, in German, let's see, in German, let me see a good example. German is a little more complex. German has der, die, and das. Did I spell D right? Die and das. Der, die, das. Now what does that mean? Humans do not have gender. Only nouns and verbs can have gender. This is what they should have taught you. So der is a masculine, die is a feminine, and das is the nominative, the neuter case. So it's der Ball. And in Ball. In German, that's German, der Ball. And so der Ball in German, der Ball in German is a nominative case. And the other cases, I'll try to show this to you. We'll try to use English examples too, but their nouns in English don't change. Pronouns do change in English. Right? Right? So, see, I got an example. Bill ran. Bill ran. Bill ran. I ran. I ran. I ran. He ran. She ran. They ran. We'll get into verbs later, but that is the nominative case in English. Now the object. The object is called the accusative. 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 Accusative case of the noun. So in the accusative case of the noun, Bill caught a fish. The accusative case is fish. Bill is, in this case, is still the nominative, still the subject. The object is a fish. So Bill caught a fish. That makes sense, right? In other languages, we call it the accusative case. In the case of the nominative, we usually abbreviate it NOM, and the accusative we abbreviate it ACC. The indirect object in English, let me see, in German, what happens in the accusative case, so let me see if I can remember it right. The accusative case does not change, I believe. It stays der die das. I don't think it changes in the singular. In the indirect object is called the dative case. Dative. Dative. And it's, for example, Bill gave the students some cake. Some cake is the accusative case. That's the object. He gave the students. The students are the indirect object. In German, what happens is when der Ball becomes the accusative case or the dative case, it changes to dem Ball. And D becomes der Fraulein. And das stays das, I think. No, maybe it becomes, I can't remember what das does. Anyway, other languages indicate the noun case, the case of the noun, by changing either the article or, in Greek, it changes the end of the noun. In Greek, the end of the noun changes to indicate what case it is. And there are other languages, let's see, I think some Latin languages do that too. In English, we change nouns to indicate right? Girls. Girl is a singular. We can have the girl, a girl. You can have girls, right? That's plural. And so we change our nouns to indicate the plural. Other languages, what do? They change the article. Sometimes they change the noun themselves, but many times they change the article. So in German, die Balls. I think it's die Balls. So D is the article for balls, and when you make it balls, it changes the article. We do the same thing for pronouns, right? We have pronouns that change based on number. And in fact, I'll mention this in a second. The possessive case is called the genitive case. Genitive. Genitive case. And for example, bills, apostrophe S. Okay, the destruction of every student, right? Or the misuse of the apostrophe, right? Oh yeah, it's terrible, isn't it? Oh, people
They
misuse.
put S apostrophe all the time when they're not supposed to.
Well, yeah. Anyone know what this means? You know what this means, right? What does that mean?
There are a lot of bills.
There are a lot of bills, yeah, like the Bills, like the Buffalo Bills, yeah, the Bills. So, or maybe bills in your pocket. But this is the way English makes a possessive. This is the way English makes a plural. And then, we also can make a possessive in English with of Bill, right? The house of Bill, something of Bill or whatever. Of, what is of? It's a preposition. You know, in other, we have these cases, and usually genitive, we call it the GEN case. In other languages, like German or French or whatever, the prepositions take a case. Like, for example, in German, there is no German of. Germans just changed the thing to indicate that it's a possessive case. But in other languages, for example, anytime I have a possession or a preposition, the preposition in other languages can take a nominative case, an accusative case, a dative case, or a genitive case. And in most cases, you have to remember them. You memorize them with rhymes and things. In German, there was some rhyme, I can't remember it, but there was a rhyme that had all the, especially the dative cases. The dative cases are really hard. The accusative cases you kind of always can figure out. But English does the same thing, right? You would never say, with I. What would you say?
Me.
Why?
Because it's an object, it's a pronoun, objective pronoun.
It takes the accusative or dative case. All English prepositions take an accusative or dative case. We don't care because it's always, well, the other thing that we do in English, and I'll just mention this quickly, we'll see this in Greek all the time. What governs in English the object, the subject, the object, the indirect object in general? Look at a little example they gave you. It's position. It's position in the sentence. In English, unlike most languages, like in German, I can put der Ball and dem Ball anywhere in the sentence, and everyone knows one is the object and one is the dative case, right? One is the subject, one is the dative. I can do that every day, all day, and you'll always get it. In English, what I do is I use prepositions or I use the position in the sentence to determine that. We are a very odd language in that. Most languages do not do that. So, languages have rules, but you can break those rules as long as people understand what you're writing. In English, if I mess the order of the words in the sentences up, I get it all messed up. In other languages, you can do that, and the Greek does that. Greek also likes to do what we would call reverse word order because they indicate the type of order by the nominative, accusative, dative case, and they do that through the nouns. And I'll probably get more into this as we go on. This is, what do you call it, a foretaste. If we were to spend, we'd have to spend a year or more to understand all the details of any language. So if we get little bits and pieces that maybe help us as we go along, right? But also, if you absorb this, you'll be way ahead. It's like, at least you understand why we do what we do, right, in English, because this is a positive, I think. Anyway, so your teachers would all thank you for this. In any case, this is how this works. I gave you some examples, some stuff, and now let's look at John, maybe even with even more understanding. And I'll remind you, if you have questions, just ask. Oh, come on, wake up. You go to sleep.
Peter's
Sleeping. Wake up, wake up!
And just don't try it with Chinese, because apparently Chinese do not have prepositions. I was teaching this Chinese lady English so
Really?
that she could pass her citizenship test.
Yeah?
And prepositional phrases meant no sense at all. So we were just going over and over all the common ones that we use all the time.
There are. That's not my computer. There are all kinds of magic things. Languages are really interesting, and to study languages morphologically, right? To study how languages work is something I kind of do as a hobby. I'm more interested in dead languages like Greek and Anglo-Saxon, but yeah, the Asian languages are not totally foreign, but they're really different. And they indicate stuff like, for example, they do like Greek. Greek is a somewhat Oriental language. So in Japanese, to indicate the nominative case, the subject, they put wa, W-A, wa, the sound, wa. It's a thing. So bilwa, and you can put bilwa almost anywhere in the sentence to do it. And also in Japanese, which is really interesting language, you have to complete a thought. It's considered super impolite. You know how in English we may begin a thought or a sentence, and in the middle of the sentence we'll do, or we'll go on in a paragraph like I am doing right now, right? In Japanese, you don't do that. In Japanese, it's a complete sentence is a complete thought. And if you don't get out your whole complete thought, that is considered highly impolite, bad speaking, and all this other stuff. And we would go, wait a second, give me a little time here, right? But it's literally a Japanese person, before they speak, is supposed to completely compose their sentence and then speak it. I think that'd drive me crazy, but
Oh,
yeah. And can you imagine you teach children? And by the way, they teach children literally the forms of, in Japanese is a relatively simple language, very euphemistic, but the forms they teach children are less complex. And as the child gets older, they learn more and more complex. They learn the female speech, the male speech. Children speak a language that is simplified. Oh, isn't that interesting? Our children do it naturally because they can't form stuff, but whatever. But the Japanese kids, they do it on purpose. All right, here's where we stopped before. And here's the translation, King James. He came to his own received him not. We translated this. To his own he came, and his own did not take hold of him. And what I wanted to point out to you is, this is really beautiful Greek. Because there is an uncertainty wrapped in this sentence. In English, we just kind of go over this sentence. We like it. He came into his own, and his own received him not. Doesn't this beg questions that were not defined yet? I mean, okay, I know we've already been through 10 verses, but in those 10 verses, did John talk about Jews or Gentiles, or who did he talk about? The only thing he talked about in the whole thing in those first 10 verses was the creation, right? So the creation means everyone. Well, look what it says. To his own he came, and his own did not take hold of him. So who are his own?
Well, it's kind of hard for us because we know. Like, we know Jesus. Like, we know his history.
We know the punchline.
Yeah, we know, right? So
We're
we
gonna get to the
automatically think,
punchline.
okay, well, that means the Jewish people.
Right.
Even though it hasn't been told to us yet.
It hadn't been told. Well, has anyone looked forward? When is the punchline? When do we get to tell us? When does he actually doesn't tell us to tell us. But we finally get the name of the guy he keeps talking about. Has anyone looked ahead? Oh, no, I won't. I should put you on the thing here, right? 17, in 17 we finally get, and I outlined, I did it in bold for you, because in the 17th verse, finally, we get to know who this guy is. But we don't get any of that. He doesn't tell us. It's an unstated, okay, remember I tell you in Greek. Now, what have we noticed about this writer? He's not exactly following the pure Greek, although I think he's a great Greek writer. Have you noticed? These words are much simpler than what we saw in Hebrews. If you were in Hebrews class, the words are much simpler. The use of the Greek is much simpler. It doesn't mean it's simple. It doesn't mean it's like kiddie writing. It means that it's a little less complex than the form that was used in Hebrews. Remember, Hebrews was using all those words that were like this one, paralabon, right? Paralabon is a word like we're used to seeing in Hebrews. But that was every verb was like this, right? Paralabon, because paralabon is a preposition, a prefix with another verb, right? Do you remember that? Remember all those verbs that I tore apart and I said, this means that? This means to near, take hold of. If I use labon, it would just be took hold of. But you notice he uses near, take hold of. I should probably leave that in the translation. Matter of fact, I should put that in there, because what does it mean to just take hold of, but near take hold of? Near take hold of means what? He's right there, right? You're right there. In other words, he's not off someplace else. However, Laban means literally to seize with your hands. So you better be near. Only in English can we think that take hold of means something euphemistic. You see what I'm saying? Because in Greek, to take hold of something, you have to be close to it, and you have to be able to grab it, because otherwise you couldn't take hold of it, right? You couldn't seize it. In English, however, we can seize anything. We can seize a day, we can seize an idea, we can seize, well, wait, how do I do that? You know, right? As well as you can seize your child by the shoulder and, you know, give him a little bit of Spockism, right? So,
Aren't they saying that here, euphemistically here? They're taking hold of the concept of Jesus.
no, I don't think so at all. I think the point he's making, and see, this is a punchline, right? Remember, it says, the whole part about this before was how this, whatever it is God. And he's now in the world, right? He created the world, now he's part of the world. And now he came to his own, which I would interpret right now as being all humans, right? Everyone he created, everything he created. And he was near enough, right? Near enough to take hold, to be taken hold of. You see what I'm saying? So it's not euphemistic at all. I think this is very concrete Greek.
So that God truly came into the world physically.
That's what John is telling us, right? But he hasn't reached to tell us. It's a mystery. It's a build-up. This is the way good writers are supposed to do stuff. You present a secret or a mystery, and then you solve it, right? Don't you guys like crime novels? Or even not crime novels. Every novel presents a secret, something that no one, you know, the protagonist or whoever doesn't know what's going to happen, right? But then you solve the crime, you solve the mystery, you solve the secret, you answer the question. And even in love, right? Does he love me? Does he love me not? Does she love me? Does she love me not? You know, you resolve that secret by eventually someone goes, oh, I love you, right? And maybe they do, maybe they don't. Uh-oh, come on, move. All right. Look what it says. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Okay, let's see what this says in the Greek. This is the Greek, and what I wanted to point out to you is you notice we can see that under here, this represents that Greek stuff and all those cases right here. Oh, come on. It's supposed to do it when you go underneath it.
Go to one that doesn't have a red one there now.
There we go. You see, this is a personal relative program, nominative, masculine, plural. So if you understand the code, if you don't understand the code, you just do the rollover and you can see what it means. But you notice this is a personal relative program, a nominative, masculine, plural. What's a relative pronoun? Like himself, herself, etc. That's what a relative pronoun is. And this is a conjunction. Give us a little conjunction. This is one of those things. And then we can see right here, now we get a little more complex. I'll talk about verbs later, but just so you know, verb, aorist, indicative, active, third person, plural. Now, what good is that? If I know that it's a third person plural, if I know it's a third person plural verb, if the author doesn't give me a subject, a nominative case, what do I know automatically?
Who?
Well, it's a third person plural, so it could mean they, right? It could mean they. This doesn't indicate, sometimes in Greek, it will indicate if it's masculine or feminine. So it could mean women, it could be men, but this case it's general, but it's a plural. So I could just throw they in front of that. But you notice, my relative pronoun already is a plural nominative case. So he's told me, he's indicating to me. But that's why in Greek, even if they leave out the subject, the nominative case, you can make it up, you can guess it. we go on. Here's some other stuff. This is a pronoun here, and this is possessive pronoun, accusative masculine, third person singular. Okay, but see, you automatically knows this is the object. You know it's the object. Right here is another verb. It has a V ahead of it. It knows it's a verb. The verb cases we don't write quite like this in English. Aorist indicative. I'll talk more about verbs at some point, but this is similar to our subjective cases. What do we call that in English with the verbs where we have a direct. He went. Let's see, indirect use of the. Remember when I'm talking about indirect verb usage? What do we call that? Where we put a generalized. Let me give you an example. Bad English. We used to call it bad written English for stuff. We said instead of the cake was made. The cake was made, right?
It's a passive voice.
A passive voice instead of an active voice. Aorist, the Greeks really like passive voice, what we would consider passive voice. This aorist case of the verbs are similar in English to passive. In other words, generalized. But you notice what it does? It's third person singular. So that gives us an indication. So even when they're giving us kind of a passive voice, they're giving us a hint as to well, not just a hint, they're actually telling us what the subject is. And so we go on and on. You look at each of these. This is what I do when I translate these. I look at every one of the word usages, for example, here. And you notice what they said. They say of God because Theo, and look at the word. Theo would be Theo, but in Greek I do it Theou because this is the genitive masculine singular. In other words, it's a possessive case. And that's the way, instead of putting a apostrophe S on it, I put a OU on it, and the OU indicates that it is the genitive case. It's a possessive case. That's the way you can tell what the cases are. And even if the word order is like kind of messed up to English, you can put it together. So like if they've thrown the nominative over here, the subject over here, well, that's the subject of the verb. So you just got to find the right verb, which is not difficult. Anyway, and you have prepositions. Prepositions, and here's a great example here of a preposition that takes an accusative case. Iserts to or into in Greek, and you notice it takes a accusative case right here, accusative neuter singular, and name to the name. So let's see what this says. Here is the. There we go. Here's King James. But as so many as received him, to them gave he power to become sons of God, even to them who believe on his name. So here's how I translated this. This is a literal translation. How much but he took hold of to him, Edoken, he offered or gave, autos, to them. Autos, you notice, to them, it has that form indicates that. In other words, what we do in English is we use prepositions to indicate case. So what I do and what most translators do is they throw a preposition in, usually for the accusative or dative case, would be to. And for the possessive, we would say of. That's the way you throw it in there. X was in privilege, techna children, theo of God, gesinte, to cause to be, to the pistousin, be persuading, biological argument, enter into, to the onoma, a name of him. So we correct the word order, we put it together, we throw the cases in the correct order for English, and this is what we get. But as many as took hold of him, he offered to them the privilege of children of God. He caused it to be by the persuading biological argument in his name. So do you see this? We know the punchline. The people that are hearing this or reading this for the first time don't know what he's talking. Well, what are you doing the whole time that you're hearing this for the first time? He's giving you hints, right? Well, he started with the first hint. The first hint was he was quoting from the Septuagint about the word, the logical argument, the Amar. So what he's talking about God. Well, now he's talking about this something that is on earth or whatever. So he's building up to this. Here's another interesting verse. The next verse.
Hey, Lyle, can I interject just a second?
Sure.
So, is the word become in English the persuasion word up there?
No, it's pistoisen. It's pistus. Remember pistus?
Yeah, but what does that relate to in the English verse? What is
Be
which?
persuading.
No, but which word is it?
Um,
Is it the word like we have?
by the persuading by a logical argument.
I don't think you're understanding. The King James. Which word in
Oh,
the King James is that persuaded word?
Believe.
To believe on his name. Oh, because that's not what the. Oh, there it is. Okay, I'm just trying to find it.
In the NIV, they use believe too.
Yeah, they did. I just
And
missed
this
it.
is a problem I keep telling you. They say those who believed in his name.
Okay.
Pisteo does not mean to believe. Believe is an Anglo-Saxon idea. There is no word believe in Greek. The Greeks only have the idea of to be convinced or persuaded of a logical argument. Okay? So I don't know how we got to where we got. I think I know. Well, why? Why do we take, well, it's kind of complex, but why do you think we took a very kind of complex cultural idea about persuading by a logical argument and made it believe?
Because that's the end result of being persuaded.
It could be. However, the reason we did it is because when you're translating, you want to take one word and put one word for that word, right? What do we call it when you put multiple words? There's a name for that. We call it a what's that?
Paraphrase?
Not a paraphrase, but rather a, I'm seeing it in my mind, it starts with an A. It's amplified. When you see if you ever see an amplified translation, the amplified translation will generally take the words and turn them into more of the cultural speak of the language by using multiple English words. In other words, we have a word, believe, right? It's an Anglo-Saxon cool word, and it fits within our context of ideas about God. Because we believe in we believed in Wotan and Freya. We even named our weeks after them, right? So it makes sense that all of a sudden when we became Christians, we go, what? Well, this is like Freya or Wotan, or, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right? We're going to take those, we're going to take the Christian God and we're going to apply our words, which is what we did. So when we translate them, what do? We take our words, which is the word we have. We don't have a word, pisteo. I wish we did. It probably would help people a lot. If you knew that it was a logical argument that you were being persuaded of, it's like, what do we get? Follow the science. It's like, ooh, that's not science. What is that? I can't define a woman. Oh, my goodness gracious. Then how can you even define the Constitution? But anyway, people say stupid stuff, right? In Greek, a Greek would say, you've not convinced me, right? If someone told you they can't define woman, you say you're either lying or stupid. So, we need a word in English that's that word, but we don't have it, unfortunately. So, you can believe it or not, right? Belief is a function of a sense of the will, but you can believe anything. You know what I'm saying? I can believe the world is flat. I can believe that we never made it to the moon. I can believe that airplanes don't fly. I can believe all kinds of stuff. It doesn't make it true. However, can you be convinced? You see what I'm saying? I love the Greek. The Greek is so concrete. And what's really interesting is look what it says. A logical argument enter into in his name. Well, he hasn't told us yet, right? He's got a buildup. He told us this word, this logical argument, this reason that created the whole universe. And now he's saying that if you received him, if you took hold of him, he offered to them the privilege of the children of God. He caused it to be by the persuading biological argument in his name. We still don't know who this guy is. Yes, sir.
I'm just noticing with the King James, the way they translate it is kind of odd with that section, is the power to become the sons. That seems like a different idea than the privilege of being children. It sounds like when you have the power to become something, you have to do something to get that. But the privilege is something that's bestowed upon you. You don't have to do anything to get a privilege. You don't have to,
It's almost like grace.
yeah.
You just have to be convinced, right? If I'm convinced, I have the privilege of becoming. I think it's also, I love this idea in the Greek, to take hold of, right? I know we like to say receive, that comes right out of Strong's, but the Vines is more correct in the Greek, I believe, that the Greek sense is to grasp it. When they use lambanos means to take hold of, to seize it. There's another word for receive, I can't remember what it is right offhand, but if the Greek writer wanted to use receive to get it, right, he would use a different term. But when he says that you are to, you lambano it, he means that you grasp it. And we know that's, well, I think that's true. I mean, from a logical argument, right? What do we want to do? Okay, I'm going to tell you the punchline. Jesus Christ. We want to grasp hold of Jesus Christ, right? Hold on for dear life, because that's what it's all about, I would say.
Isn't there a verse, is it in John where it says the work of salvation is stands?
Yes, I think it is, and we'll get to that. So that's really cool, right? Here's one that's interesting, though. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision, or a husband's will, but born of God. Here's the Greek. I got it in case we need to look at it. But let's do a literal. Let's see the King James. King James, I want to compare the King James. I think it's a better word order. Which were born not of blood, nor the will of the flesh, nor the will of man, but of God. There's a little different, too. They didn't say the will of a husband, and I think that's more accurate. Let's see what it says. Hoi means who, which, what. So it's a pronoun that can mean any of those. So you know it. This in Greek is one of the things you have to know by its context. So it tells us because we get, how do you know who, which, what it is because of what the subject is. No or not is uk, X is from out, and hamaton of bloods. Ode, not however, neither, ek, from out or out from among. You notice the difference between X and ek? Thomantos, of determination, act of will. Sarkos, of flesh, we know sarkos, sarx, right? Ode, not however, from out or out from among. Philemetenos, the determination of a man, andros. All other things from out of or from among, etc. So, I know it's gobbledygook when it's in the literal translation, but if we translate, we put it in the right word order, who were procreated not from out of blood, not, however, out from an act of will of flesh, not, however, out of an act of will of a man, however, out of God. I think that is a very, very powerful statement. Because you notice what it does. I think the King James is a little bit stronger. But the Greek itself, who were procreated not from out of blood, not from the active will of flesh, and not from the active will of a man, but out of God. Powerful, in my opinion, just the way that it's stated. I know we want to make it nice, clean English, right? The direct translation is a little less pretty, but yet the words are, to me, very powerful. And you notice the word usage. We'll see this again in chapter 3. You see what John has done for us? Do you remember the Greeks believed in sarx, suke, and pneuma. We're going to really see how this plays out because the Pharisees and the Sadducees, both the Pharisees and the Sadducees, believe in Adam and Nefesh. They don't believe that human beings can have pneuma. Pneuma, the Ruach HaKodesh. The only people that get Ruach HaKodesh or pneuma are prophets, right? And you know they're prophets because they're running around naked. So the thing is, they don't believe, the Pharisees and Sadducees do not believe that people can naturally have pneuma or Ruach HaKodesh. That the Ruach of God does not rest on them. And so we talked about it. The Sadducees believe in a physical resurrection, or the Sadducees do not believe in any resurrection. Adam and Nefesh, when your breath goes and your Adam is left, the Greeks would say that's your sarx. They don't even have a word. Well, they would probably say that breath is suke. Remember suke, sarx, suke, pneuma? So the sarx is the flesh. The suke is the thoughts or the unconscious breath. And the pneuma is the conscious breath or free will. So what the author has done, do you see what they did? He gave us the sarx. He said that the creation, right, born out of, well, we know this, right? It's Adam. The Adam is the sarx. So we are going to see, and this is really important, because when we get to chapter 3, this author is going to tell us all about the pneuma. Remember that thing about Nicodemus? It's all about pneuma. It's not what you think. Because in the Greek is very clear. And we will see how clear it is. But it's about pneuma. It indicates also the birth from above. From Christ is an act of God and not of human birth. Unlike the Jewish people or another group, right? The Jewish people or another group, what is their act? How do you become a Jewish person?
You can convert.
You can convert, yes. But how do you normally become a Jewish person?
Born from a Jewish woman.
You're born from a Jewish mother. If you're a boy, it's not enough, right? You got to have circumcision on the seventh day. So 8th day, yeah. You got to be circumcised, right? So there is a requirement for guys, but not for women. Why? Because women are perfect. They're the XX, the end of creation, and by the way, the Jews believe they did not sin. We have a different opinion, but that's okay. You know, women, you can pick which shoes you want.
Be very careful.
But you see this? The really important thing about this is the birth from above. Where do you think we're going to hear about the birth from above again? Chapter 3. See, I keep telling you that this Greek stuff is not what you think. We are English speakers. So in English speakers, right, we want the subject, we want the introduction, we want the body, and we want the conclusion. Greeks aren't. Greeks ain't written that way. Even the Latinized Greeks are writing that way. What they're doing is they're going to give you a logos to tell us, a logical argument to tell us. So what do you think the author's doing? Giving you definitions, assumptions, and he's going to give you a logical argument. Now you may miss it because he's not going to do a, and I conclude therefore that, right? That's not the way Greek works. He's going to expect you to figure it out, and that's our problem, right? We don't want to be thinking when we're reading. That's a horrible thought, isn't it? You have to think when you're reading? Unless you're reading comic strips. Well, even then, sometimes I read a comic strip and I go, what? Right? Makes me think. That's terrible.
I like it delivered on a silver platter, personally.
Ah, there you go. There you go.
Underline it.
Yeah.
Underline. Well, in the military, we do foot stompers. So if I do a foot stomper, that means it's on the test. You didn't know that, did you? A good teacher will do that every time. Here's the NIV. The word. Well, wait. We heard about the word, right? The logical argument, we know that became flesh, sarx, and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. Now, even in English, we're starting to see some code words here that we know about. This is some really cool stuff. I'll just skip over to here. Let's see what it says in the King James. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory. The glory is the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. Okay, here's a translation. I guess there's some really important things to see in this, so I'll just go over the most important. So we know the Word, right? Logos, a logical argument. Sarx, flesh, sarx, right there. E geneto, to cause to become. Ooh, to cause to become. That's interesting. We'll see what the translation says, but to cause to become, it didn't say that it was procreated or made. Look what it says. See, the King James says was made flesh. The NIV says the Word became flesh, which is a little, okay.
I think that's better, actually, than.
I do too. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because he was talking before about procreation, and now he's moved to, okay, don't forget, we're talking about a four-dimensional God that's projected in 3 dimensions. The minute the creation occurred, then now I can see Christ, I can see the Spirit. I love C.S. Lewis. What a great guy, right? What a smart guy. To dwell in a vessel that produces shade. The exkinosin. And anyone who remembers exkinosin, remember skino? Skino, that's the word that's a feminine word that means a vessel that can apply to woman, like the Greeks. Okay, I know, nobody thinks the Greeks were emancipated. That's okay. The ancient world was not emancipated. Ladies, you needed somebody to protect you. And so it is great to have men to protect you until you get to 45. When you get to 45, that's modern technology. You can protect yourself and your children. But before that, you really need a man to protect you because the ancient world is really a horrific kind of place. And so women in Greek society were seen as not equivalent, but a equal producer with their husband. And so therefore, in Greek literature and Greek writing, you see women of the word skenos applied to them, being a vessel for their husband's productivity. You think that's pretty cool? Because they're a vessel of productivity because they create the children for the family, right? They also are a vessel for productivity because they participated with their husband in the work. Like a fisherman's wife, right, would mend nets, take care of the fish, do other stuff, right? So that's why in Greek, there is a term for a fisherman-ess. In Greek, there is a deacon. There is also a deaconess. Remember that term in Greek? Because what is usually a deaconess? A wife of a deacon. A fishermaness is a wife of a fisherman. And therefore, they are a vessel that allows the husband to be productive. Not just children, but in their work. You know, we kind of lost that idea, right, in our society. But I think it's a very important word in ancient cultures, an important idea. But you notice this word eskinosin means to dwell in a vessel that produces shade, a cloth tent. That should also make you think a little bit if a woman is what? Something that allows the husband and the children to dwell in safety under, right? It's a protective kind of thing. Anyway, there's a lot in this in Greek that we don't grasp. In Herman, to us, as a Samantha, we look closely at, to stare closely at, look closely at doxin, what evokes good opinion, inherent intrinsic worth. We translate that glory. Tammy was asked me, we looked up what the Hebrew talks about glory. In Hebrew, glory is wealth. in Greek, what evokes good opinion is glory. Now remember, glory is one of those indicator words. Who wants glory? Rome, the Romans. So when you see glory, the author is probably speaking to Romans. He can also speak to Greeks, that's okay. But look at the terminologies, it's interesting. Of him, what evokes good opinion, inherent interest, and the Greeks do this a lot. They'll take what we call a gerund. They take a noun and turn it into a verb, and then give us the verb. And we say, well, that's redundant. It's not redundant. It has meaning. It's very important. They're trying to emphasize a point. So that's why we get the verb and the noun, right? Which how monogeneous, of only born, monogeneous, of only born or only procreated. Para, near we know that. Patros, of father. Pharis, abounding in charatos, graciousness of manner act, which we translate grace almost all the time. Alethus, of not false. And so that's genitive or possessive. So here's the translation. Here's in the correct order. And the logical argument, remember the word, he caused to become flesh. Sarkos. And to dwell in a vessel that produces shade with us. And dwell in a vessel that produces shade with us. Okay, I told you Greek is not euphemistic, but you see what the Greek author did for us? A vessel that produces shade could be a mother. It could be a profession. It could be a tabernacle. It could be a house or a tent. In other words, he is dwelling with us in reality. Because, this is important. You know about the Arians, right? The Arians believe that Jesus was, there's three ways of thinking about Christ, about God. Christ is God. We are Nicaeans. We believe that Christ and God are the same. The Arians believe that Christ is a man that achieved Godhood. There's another view of it, and that is that Christ was just a spiritual kind of guy, right? Just a spirit, not really a human being. But we believe and know, and by the way, John tells us, and we haven't reached the punchline yet, so we're not there yet, but John is telling you that not only is he flesh, that he is physically with us. Matter of fact, near enough to grasp hold of. I think this is a beautiful thing. It's just like, remember it says, the kingdom of heaven is near? That's not what it says. It says the kingdom of heaven is near enough to grasp hold of. It's near. It's right there. It's beside you. It's not almost there like in English, right? We say, well, it's coming. No, it's here, right? I think this is, in my opinion, beautiful Greek. He dwell in a vessel that produces shade with us, and we look closely at his inherent intrinsic worth. An inherent intrinsic worth of the only born beside the Father. Beside the Father. Abounding in gracious of act and not false. Remember I told you, when it talks about Jesus being on the right hand of God, it basically says in the Greek, and we'll probably see this again because we looked at it in Matthew and Mark, it doesn't say that he's sitting beside the Father. It says he and the Father are basically in the same throne. Right? It's not like, here's God. Hey, Jesus, here's your throne. Sit over here, would you? Okay? Or here's your little chair. Here's your kitty chair. Right? That's not what it is. It's Jesus and God are in the same throne. Well, guess what? They are the same. Yeah. So they're together in the same throne. I need to get this a timeout.
You need to change your settings.
Change my settings so it doesn't time out. That's right. Anyway, and I put down here, okay, the klaten, allusion to the tabernacle of Moses, term also allusion to birth and the appropriate vessel that has a human form of body. So all that argument that the Arians made or that others have made about Jesus not being a human, it cracks me up. The guy, that Brown guy, wrote that book. And everybody believes it as truth, and yet he has no factual background for anything he says. And we read in the Greek, and we immediately see, that guy's a dope, right? He's just making stuff up. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, because already John has told us what, well, he hasn't done the punchline yet, but he's already told us that Jesus Christ is God. He's told us that Jesus Christ is human, flesh, right, and dwelt among us. It wasn't a spirit. Pat sent me this thing, and one of the great mythologies of modern liberal history is that the idea of Jesus is just made up. He was just some guy. They made up this idea, and they in the 2nd or 3rd century they decided, oh, we're going to make him a physical thing, right? He was just, and Paul, they want to say that Paul, attribute it to Paul that Paul even thought that Jesus was just this guy, right? And it's like, how can you read John in the Greek and not get this whole point? You gotta be totally ignorant, right? You can't be reading the Greek. Yes, sir.
Well, it all goes back to that whole coexist thing where they're slowly trying to make all religions so they can say they're all the same.
They're all
It's
the same.
God.
Yeah, it's all the same, right? Well,
Jesus wasn't a God, he was just a person.
well, and the thing that really gets me, okay, and I know we're out of time, the thing that really gets me is, okay, we look at these documents like they're, they're primitive, right? How primitive is this? Is this primitive? This is some pretty deep stuff. This is stuff that like I said, you got to start thinking while you're reading. You go, oh man, my brain is kind of like fried. So, and it's not like it's confusing. I don't think it's confusing, but it is complex ideas. It's not just some simple thing. And the Word was with God, and God was the Word, and la. It is really deep things that are not euphemistic. They're not euphemistic. They're physically active, real things. And that's why John is getting into the sarx. Sarx means he's going to talk about what? Suke and pneuma. So let's watch. That's what's going to happen. Thank you, Lord, for your word. We pray you look at us this week. In your name we pray. Amen.